Hi, friends, and welcome to Lights On, Neuromoms Collective podcast. We are so glad that you're here today, whether you are taking a walk, folding laundry, or just trying to relax. We are here to share some love and some information today. My name is Amanda, and my co-host is...
My name is Erin. I'm super happy to be here today. I'm dialing in from my home in Oregon. And Amanda, you are at home, and then you've brought a guest who's at her home.
Yes. Yes, today I am so happy that we have Autumn with us, and I'm going to butcher your last name, so I'll let you say your last name.
It's Kolchewik, just like how it looks. Unless you're
Okay.
from the homeland, then it's Kuhavik.
Ooh. And what is the homeland?
My in-laws are Polish, and they're very proud of it.
Okay. Love that. Thank you. So Autumn is joining us today, and Autumn is a licensed social worker who works at Rise and Thrive Wellness, and she has been a social worker in the field for over 10 years, and she is going to share with us some insight today because we are always looking for ways to help and support. And Autumn came to us recommended by Megan and my daughter Mackenzie. They all work together. So we are so glad that you are here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. I am so excited to share what information I can, and hopefully it helps somebody make the journey that both you guys have gone through a little bit easier, less taxing situation. I'm excited and ready to answer questions and give information.
That's great. One of the biggest things when I think of my time, our kids both had terrible experiences. My son spent a total of about 2 years in the hospital. And every time that I left his room to take a shower, that I left his room to have a proper meal, that I wanted to take care of myself in any way, the guilt I had was overwhelming, and the anxiety I had was overwhelming, that I was going to miss the next big medical decision, or that I was just going to be perceived as a mom who didn't care. I worried about that nonstop, that the doctor would walk in and be like, wow, nobody's here to care about you. What a lousy mom. And so I know you're going to talk to us about the spoon theory, but I think that really is something that I wish I would have known 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So can you, Autumn, tell us what the spoon theory, the quick gist, and then we'll get into it more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I learned from spoon theory from actually my grandmother, who was a psychiatric nurse for a long time. And she also dealt with a lot of individuals with developmental and intellectual needs. So they had different days than what a neurotypical individual would look like. And so spoon theory actually comes from the lupus setting and the chronic illness setting. Christine Mariando. In 2003, she wrote an essay called The Spoon Theory. So she was diagnosed with lupus prior to that, and she was trying to explain to one of her friends at a diner of my days are sometimes I have a lot of energy, sometimes I have a little energy, sometimes I'm more fatigued. And so she took a bunch of spoons on the table and threw them down on the dining room table and was like, okay, I need you to see these spoons as like physical representations of different things that I have to deal with throughout the day. Getting out of bed for a normal person may be one spoon. Someone with lupus or someone with a chronic illness, a mental health illness, or even who are going through traumatic situations, getting out of bed may be 4 spoons. It may not be the one spoon that it may be for a neurotypical person. And so that, understanding that baseline premise of like everybody has different needs and levels and energy output, it's just a really good working metaphor and visual processing tool for people to see when you need to take a break, how you need to take care of yourself, how our needs, but our energy is finite. It doesn't just magically come back. You have to work at getting it back. You have to recover.
I love that analogy because I think about so many times in Mackenzie's recovery, and we do have full disclosure to talk about our children and their situations, but there were times where she would just say things like, I don't have enough of my energy to do this. And I love the visual representation of a spoon. It could be anything, but I love that because I feel like it makes it concrete. I think she really struggled for so long to explain. My brain is different now. Yeah. I used to be able to do these things. And there are some days where I just can hardly even get out of bed. So that just resonates so much with our journey over the last 10 years.
I think that this is why spoon theory has been so successful at applying it to many areas of life, and not just chronic pain. With your guys' situation, I've worked with clients, not necessarily with TBIs directly, but I've worked with parents who've had kids in the NICU. And so that little bubble, right, of like, you don't really leave the hospital much, or if you do, it's to just go shower, to just go feed yourself, to just go do those necessary hygiene things. And so that alone can drain you because you're not getting all the extra social interaction we need. We're not getting all of the support we need. And I think that's a good idea when you're thinking about how many spoons I have. It's also taking into consideration your village and your support system, because that plays a role into how you handle your day-to-day operations.
It does. And I think that the more we are learning about stress and what it does to our bodies, and just thinking of it through that lens, as caregivers, it is so important for us to figure that out. And it doesn't come natural to us. Like Erin was saying, leaving their bedside, how stressful that could be. I left the hospital one time and Mackenzie had a panic attack. So guess what? I wasn't leaving the hospital again. You know, so it's all those things that really trigger so deep down inside of us and stay with us.
And I think moms in particular, I can't speak from the dad point of view, but for moms in particular, and I work with a lot of moms, we like to put ourselves on the bottom of the totem pole, which makes sense, right? We're supporting everybody. However, if you continuously don't take care of your base, of your root, it's going to wear out and it's going to break. And that's what does happen. We create these systems where, like, Mackenzie is now doing well and thriving and amazing, but she couldn't have done that if she didn't have that support during that time period. But if you never step back and let her have those moments of needing that independence, that also plays into the role of her recovery and how much your guys' relationship can grow into a more beautiful thing that's not just caregiver.
Yeah. Oh, so true. Oh, goodness. Mackenzie and I could talk for hours about our journey through that, because, wow, that's a tricky one.
It is.
And I think mother-daughter relationships are very unique in themselves. She was 17 when the accident happened. That's a tricky time in a young lady's life anyways.
Yes.
And so then all of a sudden you're fully dependent on your mother. So there was quite a journey back from parent to caregiver to our relationship now, which is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for all of that. But yes, it's that being there in that moment and then figuring out how to step back and to watch it. And sometimes that's really painful.
It is.
Almost as painful as the initial part of it.
It is. It's uncomfortable too, because you have to have faith in yourself and faith in your child or the individual you're caretaking for, that they're going to be able to ask for help, or they're going to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And that's different from situation to situation. You two have had situations with TBIs, and those can be so varying. Unfortunately, there's not like a hard, fast rule of like how we can have those navigations, but just looking at the whole picture, I think, really helps, and like what the long-term goals are. But with spoon theory, some of the core concepts I wanted to kind of let you guys know about is that we do have limited energy, so it's finite. It doesn't just appear magically. We can drink as much coffee as we want, but it's not going to do the job, guys, as much as we would like. It makes us think about the costs of each task we take, and this comes down to talking to people about boundaries too. You talked about how she didn't have energy to do certain things. A big thing I talked about with caregivers is like, how much energy do you have in relaying information to people? Because that alone is a lot, right? And I'm sure as caregivers, you were the center point of communication between everybody. That is so draining. And so that alone, being able to offload some of that and going on your support system, that can help so much. That's so many spoons. People, I think, really downplay how much human interaction or even driving can affect us. But I don't know about you guys, but if I had to drive back and forth to Chicago every day, that's like 4 spoons right there. That's a lot. So I was kind of like, it's not just the hygiene stuff. It's every task we do throughout our day is going to take different amounts of energy for ourselves, and how do we account for that? And then how do we plan for that? So that's the other part. So borrowing from tomorrow is a big thing people like to do. And it creates this lovely boom bust cycle that we all probably know very well of, I'm just going to ram through everything today. I'm okay. I got this. And then tomorrow and the day after, and possibly 3 days, depending on the individual and their issues, you're like in bed because you can't do anything because you've literally taxed yourself to the max. Whether this is depression, anxiety, some kind of chronic pain, or caregiver burnout, whatever. This boom bust cycle just continues. And it gets worse. It's harder to get back up when you're down in that bust part. So every time we go into this cycle, and I'm sure as caregivers you guys can think of a time that this happened with both of your kids, every time you'd get into this cycle of borrowing spoons from the next day, and you'd be out for multiple days, or you'd just be completely disassociated because you have nothing cognitively to give. Like the doctor would talk to you and be like, what? Can you say that again? I remember when we first talked, Amanda, you said you give out like caregiver baskets, and some of them is like a notebook, I think is what you said, right? To write stuff down. And I love that because that's a great example of saving space for spoons, because those doctors are going to throw so much information sometimes. You're not going to remember it. Just know you're not going to remember it. And so that's like a very good way of like offloading information so that you can focus on the here and now and not have to sit there and try to remember everything the doctors are telling you.
Yeah, that is a huge stressor.
It's terrible. I'm sitting here quietly on Amanda's probably worried about me because I usually talk so much that it's a little too much. But
she did say you were the talker.
It's true. I'm just sitting here like, yes. So I just want you to know that my quiet is just my I'm just taking it all in. I'm processing. You said something and there was a natural pause and I was like, this is where you open your mouth and speak. And I was like, still processing data. I love this. A thing I give a ton of thought to all the time is how can we possibly, when parents or caregivers are in the hospital with their loved one, how can we possibly convey the language to them? Because people said to me, it's a marathon, not a race. It's a sprint. People said you have to take care of yourself or you're burnout. They said the words. I did not believe them. I did not know how to believe them. And I know that they meant well. And looking back, even though I know Amanda met Nurse Erin, who took amazing care of my son, and we were together for weeks and weeks. I know cognitively now that Erin would have supported me leaving to go to a movie. She really would have. Yeah. But I still wouldn't do it today. I know that I should. I know all this, but I don't know how we get through. I don't know if it's just the patriarchy and the way that we were raised as women that we just can't get past that. I don't know if it's the pressure that we put from within us. I don't know if it's the biology of being a mother. I don't know. But even though I know the truth is that we should take care of ourselves, I have no idea. And that's why you're here today. I have no idea how to get people to believe a well-documented truth that I know and I can preach, but I couldn't do it.
And Erin, as you were sitting here quietly, I'm thinking every one of these is still hitting you right now.
I know.
Well, you are
having
still
brain surgery again next week.
In the thick of it.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And so my question, if you feel comfortable, Erin, what do you do to take care of yourself? How do you recoup your spoons? Because that's the reality of it, really, is the spoons have to be recouped. What do we do to recoup them? How do we clean our spoons, as I like to say, for the next day?
I am going to start stealing from the neighbors. I'm going to steal spoons from the neighbors. Do you have any spare spoons? You have a set of 8. Only one person lives there. Is that going to work? It's probably not going to work.
I do love that because you can borrow from a friend. A friend can come over and help and be like, you know what? I need you to help me do the dishes. All right, girl, I got you. I do your dishes for you. Right? Asking for help, that's beautiful. Yes. I need help.
That's what I was thinking when she was saying stealing. I'm like, Erin, you're telling yourself what you need to do.
Yes.
You got to ask for help.
You got to ask for help.
My son had his skull rebuilt. He's had 8 brain surgeries, and then he had his skull rebuilt almost 4 years ago. And the hardware has failed, and it is sticking out of his skull. It is ruptured through his skin. You can see metal. And we're waiting on this next reconstructive surgery that was supposed to have been done last week and then this week. And it's just like really stressful, not because it's unstable. He doesn't have an infection. It's not unstable, but he has terrible PTSD and he has medical PTSD, and metal sticking out your noggin isn't making him more comfortable. When I'm spending out literally 1 to 2 hours a day on the phone with the doctors every day, right?
Yeah.
And so one of our friends was like, can you guys get together? And I was like, this is what's going on. We can't. They live in the same town, but our town is big. So they live about an hour away. And so they were like, what can we do? And, 4 years ago, nothing. What can we do? Nothing. I don't want your help. I'm not going to ask for it. And I said, well, yesterday I had an all-day conference about an hour from here, and I left the house at 6 a.m. and I was getting home at 6 p.m. And I said, and I was speaking, and I said, if I got home and somebody was making me dinner, I'd be real happy about that. I got home last night and the guys were over and they were making us dinner. So I think I'm getting better at it, but it's still, I know them very, very well. But for somebody I don't know very well, shame is the overwhelming emotion when I need help.
Talk to me about that patriarchy again.
Right.
Right. No, it is though. This idea that we can't ask for help is insane. I like to brush up on my stuff. So of course last night I was like, distract myself from this storm. We're going to brush up on some research. So one of the things I remembered, because our practice is positive discipline, is this idea of community. And that's what I talked to a man about that. I am a huge person of, you need a village. And if you don't have one, let's build one. Because you cannot raise children in this world, regardless of the age of the child, without some type of village. It does not have to be family and blood, but it needs to be something. Your village can be their teachers, their coaches, their therapists, your therapist, the doctor's teams. Those are all people in the village. Your neighbors, all people in the village. When you feel safe enough and deserving enough to ask for help from, Erin, ask for help for that, that's when stuff changes. And it's little by little. It's, can you order me food? To, can you cook me food? Right? And that's one reason why people are really okay with this idea of doing meal trains, because they're really great, of little effort, not inconveniencing people. But one of the hardest things when people are in and out of the hospital is that feeding themselves and making sure they get fed, right? And so I'm a very holistic, bottom to top therapist person. For me, you treat this as a whole situation, and if you're not eating, that's like a huge chunk, your deficiency. You're already taking spoons out of your repertoire. And so that's something too. The biggest part of spoon theory I like is when we get down to it, is that you have to be able to do the self-care and the basic human needs in order for you to not go into that burnout cycle, because that overexertion, fatigue, and burnout, and then that rest and frustration of, I should have done more, I should have done this, I should have done that. And I can even imagine you guys probably, when you did go home, cleaned the house and did a bunch of different stuff around the house instead of resting. And then you would go immediately back to the hospital because you're like, it has to be done. No, it doesn't. Yeah.
It has taken me a long time to be okay with just sitting. Because of that, this constant, there's things to do, there's things to do, there's things to do.
Yeah.
And I think that piece, where you were talking about asking for help, we recognize how difficult it is. We also recognize how difficult it is for people to know what to do.
Yeah.
So that is one of our resources that we put on our website. If somebody needs support, here are some things to do.
Yeah.
We even created a pamphlet to hand out, because people, when you are going through it, you don't know how to say what you need anyways. Like Erin said, in the past, she would have just said, nope, I've got this. Now she's learning about herself and learning to say different things, but that is hard. That is hard to do as moms.
It is. It is. As a mom and as someone who works with a lot of moms, that's one of the biggest things that I work on, is we're humans too. We can't take care of our kids if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I know you both have probably heard that so many times in your life, but the truth is If your kids are dysregulated because something is happening, how can you regulate with them if you're dysregulated, if you're sleep deprived, if you're hungry, if you're distracted? How can you do any of those beautiful things if you're not in the best condition you can be in?
Hi, friends. This is Erin, and we are going to pause this episode right here. The next episode will be out in a week, and we think it's going to be well worth your time to listen to. We have really enjoyed this conversation, and there's a lot more to cover. So join us on the next episode of Lights On to finish this conversation.